Princess of Wales. Granada, 1491. There was a scream, and then the loud roar of fire enveloping silken hangings. Then a mounting crescendo of shouts of panic that spread and spread from one tent to another as the flames ran, too, leaping from one silk standard to another, running up guy ropes and bursting through muslin doors. Then the horses were neighing in terror and men shouting to calm them, but the terror in their own voices made it worse, until the whole plain was alight with 1,000 raging blazes, and the night swirled with smoke and rang with shouts and screams. The little girl, starting up out of her bed in her fear, cried out in Spanish for her mother and screamed, "The Moors! Are the Moors coming for us?" "Dear God, save us! They're firing the camp," her nurse gasped. "Mother of God, they will rape me and spit you on their sickle blades." "Mother!" cried the child, struggling from her bed. "Where is my mother?" She dashed outside, her nightgown flapping at her legs, the hangings of her tent now alight and blazing up behind her in an inferno of panic. All the thousand tents in the camp were ablaze, sparks pouring up into the dark night sky like fiery fountains, blowing like a swarm of fireflies to carry the disaster onwards. "Mother!" she screamed for help. Out of the flames came 2 huge, dark horses, like great mythical beasts moving as one, jet black against the brightness of the fire. High up, higher than one could dream, the child's mother bent down to speak to her daughter, who was trembling, her head no higher than the horse's shoulder. "Stay with your nurse, and be a good girl," the woman commanded, no trace of fear in her voice. "Your father and I have to ride out and show ourselves." "Let me come with you. Mother, I shall be burned. Let me come. The Moors will get me." The little girl reached her arms up to her mother. The firelight glinted weirdly off the mother's breastplate, off the embossed greaves of her legs, as if she were a metal woman, a woman of silver and gilt, as she leaned forwards to command. "If the men don't see me, then they will desert," she said sternly. "You don't want that." "I don't care," the child wailed in her panic. "I don't care about anything but you. Lift me up." "The army comes first," the woman mounted high on the black horse ruled. "I have to ride out." She turned her horse's head from her panic-stricken daughter. "I will come back for you," she said over her shoulder. "Wait there. I have to do this now." Helpless, the child watched her mother and father ride away. "Madre," she whimpered. "Madre, please." But the woman did not turn. "We will be burned alive!" Medea, her servant, screamed behind her. "Run! Run and hide!" "You can be quiet." The child rounded on her with sudden angry spite. "If I, the Princess of Wales herself, can be left in a burning campsite, then you, who are nothing but a Morisco anyway, can certainly endure it." She watched the 2 horses go to and fro among the burning tents. Everywhere they went, the screams were stilled, and some discipline returned to the terrified camp. The men formed lines, passing buckets all the way to the irrigation channel, coming out of terror back into order. Desperately, their general ran among his men, beating them with the side of his sword into a scratch battalion from those who had been fleeing only a moment before, and arrayed them in defence formation on the plain in case the Moors had seen the pillar of fire from their dark battlements and sallied out to attack and catch the camp in chaos. But no Moors came that night. They stayed behind the high walls of their castle and wondered what fresh devilry the mad Christians were creating in the darkness, too fearful to come out to the inferno that the Christians had made, suspecting that it must be some infidel trap. The 5-year-old child watched her mother's determination conquer fire itself, her queenly certainty douse panic, her belief in success overcome the reality of disaster and defeat. The little girl perched on one of the treasure chests, tucked her nightgown around her bare toes, and waited for the camp to settle. When the mother rode back to her daughter, she found her dry-eyed and steady. "Catalina, are you all right?" Isabella of Spain dismounted and turned to her youngest, most precious daughter. restraining herself from pitching to her knees and hugging the little girl. Tenderness would not raise this child as a warrior for Christ. Weakness must not be encouraged in a princess. The child was as iron-spined as her mother. "I am all right now," she said. "You weren't afraid?" "Not at all." The woman nodded her approbation. "That is good," she said. "That is what I expect of a Princess of Spain." "And Princess of Wales," her daughter added. This is me, this little 5-year-old girl, perching on the treasure chest with a face white as marble and blue eyes wide with fear, refusing to tremble, biting my lips so I don't cry out again. This is me, conceived in a camp by parents who are rivals as well as lovers, born in a moment snatched between battles in a winter of torrential floods, raised by a strong woman in armour, on campaign for all of my childhood, destined to fight for my place in the world, to fight for my faith against another, to fight for my word against another's, born to fight for my name, for my faith, and for my throne. I am Catalina, Princess of Spain, daughter of the 2 greatest monarchs the world has ever known, Isabella of Castile and Ferdinand of Aragon. Their names are feared from Cairo to Baghdad to Constantinople to India and beyond by all the Moors in all their many nations, Turks, Indians, Chinamen, our rivals, admirers, enemies till death. My parents' names are blessed by the Pope as the finest kings to defend the faith against the might of Islam. They are the greatest crusaders of Christendom as well as the first kings of Spain. And I am their youngest daughter, Catalina, Princess of Wales, and I will be Queen of England. Since I was a child of 3, I have been betrothed in marriage to Prince Arthur, son of King Henry of England, and when I am 15 I shall sail to his country in a beautiful ship, with my standard flying at the top of the mast, and I shall be his wife, and then his queen. His country is rich and fertile, filled with fountains and the sound of dripping water, ripe with warm fruits and scented with flowers, and it will be my country. I shall take care of it. All this has been arranged almost since my birth. I have always known it will be. And though I shall be sorry to leave my mother and my home, after all, I was born a princess, destined to be queen, and I know my duty. I am a child of absolute convictions. I know that I will be Queen of England because it is God's will, and it is my mother's order. And I believe, as does everyone in my world, that God and my mother are generally of the same mind, and their will is always done. In the morning, the campsite outside Granada was a dank mess of smouldering hangings, destroyed tents, heaps of smoky forage, everything destroyed by one candle carelessly set. There could be nothing but retreat. The Spanish army had ridden out in its pride to set siege to the last great kingdom of the Moors in Spain, and had been burned to nothing. It would have to ride back again, to regroup. "No, we don't retreat," Isabella of Spain ruled. The generals, called to a makeshift meeting under a singed awning, battered away the flies that were swarming around the camp, feasting off the wreckage. "Your Majesty, we have lost for this season," one of the generals said gently to her. "It is not a matter of pride nor of willingness. We have no tents, we have no shelter, we have been destroyed by ill luck. We will have to go back and provision ourselves once more, set the siege again. Your husband—" He nodded to the dark, handsome man who stood slightly to one side of the group, listening. "He knows this. We all know this. We will set the siege again, they will not defeat us, but a good general knows when he has to retreat." Every man nodded. Common sense dictated that nothing could be done but release the Moors of Granada from their siege for this season. The battle would keep. It had been coming for 7 centuries. Each year had seen generations of Christian kings increase their lands at the cost of the Moors. Every battle had pushed back the time-honoured Moorish rule of Al-Andalus a little further to the south. Another year would make no difference. The little girl, her back against a damp tent-post that smelled of wet embers, watched her mother's serene expression. It never changed. "Indeed, it is a matter of pride," she corrected him. "We are fighting an enemy who understands pride better than any other. If we crawl away in our singed clothes, with our burnt carpets rolled up under our arms, they will laugh themselves to Aliana, to their paradise. I cannot permit it. But more than all of this, it is God's will that we fight the Moors. It is God's will that we go forwards. It is not God's will that we go back. So we must go forwards." The child's father turned his head with a quizzical smile, but he did not dissent. When the generals looked to him, he made a small gesture with his hand. "The Queen is right," he said. "The Queen is always right." "But we have no tents, we have no camp." He directed the question to her. "What do you think?" "We shall build one," she decided. "Your Majesty, we have laid waste to the countryside for miles all around. I dare say we could not sew so much as a camise for the Princess of Wales. There is no cloth, there is no canvas. There are no watercourses, no crops in the fields. We have broken the canals and ploughed up the crops. We have laid them waste, but it is we that are destroyed." "So we build in stone. I take it we have stone?" The king turned a brief laugh into clearing his throat. "We are surrounded by a plain of arid rocks, my love," he said. "One thing we do have is stone. Then we will build not a camp, but a city of stone." "It cannot be done." She turned to her husband. "It will be done," she said. "It is God's will, and mine." He nodded. "It will be done." He gave her a quick, private smile. "It is my duty to see that God's will is done, and my pleasure to enforce yours." The army, defeated by fire, turned instead to the elements of earth and water. They toiled like slaves in the heat of the sun and the chill of the evenings. They worked the fields like peasants where they had thought they would triumphantly advance. Everyone, cavalry officers, generals, the great lords of the country, the cousins of kings, was expected to toil in the heat of the sun and lie on hard, cold ground at night. The Moors, watching from the high impenetrable battlements of the Red Fort on the hill above Granada, conceded that the Christians had courage. No one could say that they were not determined. And equally, everyone knew that they were doomed. No force could take the Red Fort at Granada. It had never fallen in 2 centuries. It was placed high on a cliff, overlooking a plain that was itself a wide, bleached bowl. It could not be surprised by a hidden attack. The cliff of red rock that towered up from the plain became imperceptibly the walls of red stone of the castle, rising high and higher. No scaling ladders could reach the top. No party could climb the sheer face. Perhaps it could be betrayed by a traitor, but what fool could be found who would abandon the steady, serene power of the Moors, with all the known world behind them, with an undeniable faith to support them, to join the rabid madness of the Christian army, whose kings owned only a few mountainous acres of Europe, and who were hopelessly divided? Who would want to leave Aliana, the garden, which was the image of paradise itself, inside the walls of the most beautiful palace in Spain, the most beautiful palace in Europe, for the rugged anarchy of the castles and fortresses of Castile and Aragon? Reinforcements would come for the Moors from Africa. They had kin and allies from Morocco to Senegal. Support would come for them from Baghdad, from Constantinople. Granada might look small compared with the conquests that Ferdinand and Isabella had made, but standing behind Granada was the greatest empire in the world, the empire of the Prophet, praised be his name. But, amazingly, day after day, week after week, slowly, fighting the heat of the spring days and the coldness of the nights, the Christians did the impossible. First there was a chapel built in the round like a mosque, since the local builders could do that most quickly. Then a small house, flat-roofed, inside an Arabic courtyard, for King Ferdinand, Queen Isabella, and the royal family. the Infante, their precious son and heir, the 3 older girls, Isabel, Maria, Juana, and Catalina, the baby. The Queen asked for nothing more than a roof and walls. She had been at war for years. She did not expect luxury. Then there were a dozen stone hovels around them where the greatest lords reluctantly took some shelter. Then, because the Queen was a hard woman, there were stables for the horses and secure stores for the gunpowder and the precious explosives for which she had pawned her own jewels to buy from Venice. Then, and only then, were built barracks and kitchens, stores and halls. Then there was a little town built in stone, where once there had been a little camp. No one thought it could be done, but, bravo, it was done. They called it Santa Fe, and Isabella had triumphed over misfortune once again. The doomed siege of Granada by the determined, foolish Christian kings would continue. Catalina, Princess of Wales, came upon one of the great lords of the Spanish camp in whispered conference with his friends. "What are you doing, Don Hernando?" she asked, with all the precocious confidence of a 5-year-old who had never been far from her mother's side, whose father could deny her very little. "Nothing, Infanta," Hernando Perez del Pulgar said, with a smile that told her that she could ask again. "You are?" "It's a secret." "I won't tell." "Oh, Princess, you would tell. It is such a great secret. Too big a secret for a little girl." "I won't. I really won't. I truly won't." She thought. "I promise upon Wales." "On Wales? On your own country?" "On England." "On England? Your inheritance?" She nodded. "On Wales and on England and on Spain itself." "Well then, if you make such a sacred promise, I will tell you. Swear that you won't tell your mother." She nodded, her blue eyes wide. "We are going to get into the Alhambra. I know a gate, a little postern gate that is not well guarded, where we can force an entry. We are going to go in. And guess what?" She shook her head vigorously, her auburn plait swinging beneath her veil like a puppy's plump tail. "We are going to say our prayers in their mosque, and I am going to leave an Ave Maria stabbed to the floor with my dagger. What do you think of that?" She was too young to realize that they were going to a certain death. She had no idea of the sentries at every gate, of the merciless rage of the Moors. Her eyes lit up in excitement. "You are? Isn't it a wonderful plan?" "When are you going?" "Tonight, this very night." "I shan't sleep till you come back." "You must pray for me, and then go to sleep, and I will come myself, Princess, and tell you and your mother all about it in the morning." She swore that she would never sleep, and she lay awake, quite rigid in her little cot bed, while her maid tossed and turned on the rug at the door. Slowly her eyelids drooped until the lashes lay on the round cheeks, the little plump hands unclenched, and Catalina slept. But in the morning he did not come. His horse was missing from its stall, and his friends were absent. For the first time in her life the little girl had some sense of the danger he had run. Mortal danger, and for nothing but glory, and to be featured in some song. "Where is he?" she asked. "Where is Hernando?" The silence of her maid Maria warned her. "He will come?" she asked, suddenly doubtful. "He will come back?" Slowly it dawns on me that perhaps he will not come back. That life is not like a ballad, where a vain hope is always triumphant, and a handsome man is never cut down in his youth. But if he can fail and die, then can my father die? Can my mother die? Can I, even I, little Catalina, Infanta of Spain and Princess of Wales? I kneel in the sacred circular space of my mother's newly built chapel, but I am not praying. I am puzzling over this strange world that is suddenly opening up before me. If we are in the right, and I am sure of that, If these handsome young men are in the right, and I am sure of that, if we and our cause are under the especial hand of God, then how can we ever fail? But if I have misunderstood something, then something is very wrong, and we are all indeed mortal. Perhaps we can fail. Even handsome Hernando Perez del Pulgar and his laughing friends. Even my mother and father can fail. If Hernando can die, then so too can my mother and father, and if this is so, then what safety is there in the world? If Madre can die like a common soldier, like a mule pulling a baggage cart, as I have seen men and mules die, then how can the world go on? How could there be a God? Then it was time for her mother's audience for petitioners and friends. And suddenly he was there, in his best suit, his beard combed, his eyes dancing, and the whole story spilled out. How they had dressed in their Arab clothes so as to pass for townspeople in the darkness. How they had crept in through the postern gate, how they had dashed up to the mosque, how they had kneeled and gabbled an Ave Maria and stabbed the prayer into the floor of the mosque, and then, surprised by guards, they had fought their way, hand to hand, thrust and parry, blades flashing in the moonlight, back down the narrow street, out of the door that they had forced only moments earlier, and were away into the night before the full alarm had been sounded. Not a scratch on them, not a man lost. A triumph for them, and a slap in the face for Granada. It was a great joke to play on the Moors. It was the funniest thing in the world to take a Christian prayer into the very heart of their holy place. It was the most wonderful gesture to insult them. The Queen was delighted, the King too. The Princess and her sisters looked at their champion, Hernando Perez del Pulgar, as if he were a hero from the romances, a knight from the time of Arthur at Camelot. Catalina clapped her hands in delight at the story, and commanded that he tell it and retell it over and over again. But in the back of her mind, pushed far away from thought, she remembered the chill she had felt when she had thought that he was not coming back. Next, they waited for the reply from the Moors. It was certain to happen. They knew that their enemy would see the venture as the challenge that it was. There was bound to be a response. It was not long in coming. The Queen and her children were visiting Zubia, a village near to Granada, so Her Majesty could see the impregnable walls of the fort herself. They had ridden out with a light guard, and the commander was white with horror when he came dashing up to them in the little village square, and shouted that the gates of the Red Fort had opened, and the Moors were thundering out, the full army, armed for attack. There was no time to get back to camp. The Queen and the 3 princesses could never outrun Moorish horsemen on Arab stallions. There was nowhere to hide. There was nowhere even to make a stand. In desperate haste, Queen Isabella climbed to the flat roof of the nearest house, pulling the little princess by her hand up the crumbling stairs, her sisters running behind. "I have to see! I have to see!" she exclaimed. "Madre, you're hurting me!" "Quiet, child. We have to see what they intend." "Are they coming for us?" the child whimpered, her little voice muffled by her own plump hand. "They may be. I have to see." It was a raiding party, not the full force. They were led by their champion, a giant of a man, dark as mahogany, a glint of a smile beneath his helmet, riding a huge black horse as if he were night riding to overwhelm them. His horse snarled like a dog at the watching guard, its teeth bared. "Madre, who is that man?" the Princess of Wales whispered to her mother, staring from the vantage point of the flat roof of the house. "That is a Moor called Yafe, and I am afraid he has come for your friend Hernando." "His horse looks so frightening, like it wants to bite." "He has cut off its lips to make it snarl at us, but we are not made fearful by such things. We are not frightened children." "Should we not run away?" asked the frightened child. Her mother, watching the Moor parade, did not even hear her daughter's whisper. "You won't let him hurt Hernando, will you, Madre?" "Hernando laid the challenge. Yafe is answering it. We will have to fight," she said levelly. "Yafe is a knight, a man of honour. He cannot ignore the challenge." "How can he be a man of honour if he is a heretic, a Moor?" They are most honourable men, Catalina, though they are unbelievers, and this Yaffe is a hero to them.
What will you do? How shall we save ourselves? This man is as big as a giant.
I shall pray, Isabella said, and my champion, Galarosco de la Vega, will answer Yaffe for Hernando. As calmly as if she were in her own chapel at Cordoba, Isabella kneeled on the roof of the little house and gestured that her daughters should do the same. Sulkily, Catalina's older sister, Juana, dropped to her knees. The princesses Isabel and Maria, her other two older sisters, followed suit. Catalina saw, peeping through her clasped hands as she kneeled in prayer, that Maria was shaking with fear, and that Isabel, in her widow's gown, was white with terror. Heavenly Father, we pray for the safety of ourselves, of our cause, and of our army. Queen Isabella looked up at the brilliantly blue sky. We pray for the victory of your champion, Garalosco de la Vega, at this time of his trial.
Amen,
the girls said promptly, and then followed the direction of their mother's gaze to where the ranks of the Spanish guard were drawn up, watchful and silent.
If God is protecting him,
Catalina started. Silence, her mother said gently. Let him do his work, let God do his, and let me do mine. She closed her eyes in prayer. Catalina turned to her eldest sister and pulled at her sleeve.
Isabel, if God is protecting him, then how can he be in danger?
Isabel looked down at her little sister. God does not make the way smooth for those he loves, she said in a harsh whisper. He sends hardships to try them. Those that God loves the best are those who suffer the worst. I know that. I, who lost the only man that I will ever love, you know that. Think about Job, Catalina.
Then how shall we win? The little girl demanded. Since God loves Madre, won't he send her the worst hardships? And so how shall we ever win?
Hush, their mother said. Watch. Watch and pray with faith. Their small guard and the Moorish raiding party were drawn up opposite each other, ready for battle. Then Yaffe rode forwards on his great black charger. Something white bobbed at the ground, tied to the horse's glossy black tail. There was a gasp as the soldiers in the front rank recognized what he had. It was the Ave Maria that Hernando had left speared to the floor of the mosque. The Moor had tied it to the tail of his horse as a calculated insult, and now rode the great creature forwards and back before the Christian ranks, and smiled when he heard their roar of rage. "Heretic," Queen Isabella whispered, "a man damned to hell. God strike him dead and scourge his sin." The Queen's champion, La Vega, turned his horse and rode towards the little house where the royal guards ringed the courtyard, the tiny olive tree, the doorway. He pulled up his horse beside the olive tree and doffed his helmet, looking up at his queen and the princesses on the roof. His dark hair was curly and sparkling with sweat from the heat. His dark eyes sparkled with anger. "Your Grace, do I have your leave to answer his challenge?" "Yes," the Queen said, never shrinking for a moment. "Go with God, Galarosco de la Vega."
"That big man will kill him," Catalina said, pulling at her mother's long sleeve. "Tell him he must not go. Yaffe is so much bigger. He will murder La Vega."
"It will be as God wills," Isabella maintained, closing her eyes in prayer.
"Mother, your Majesty, he is a giant. He will kill our champion."
Her mother opened her blue eyes and looked down at her daughter, and saw her little face was flushed with distress, and her eyes were filling with tears. "It will be as God wills it," she repeated firmly. "You have to have faith that you are doing God's will. Sometimes you will not understand. Sometimes you will doubt. But if you are doing God's will, you cannot be wrong. You cannot go wrong. Remember it, Catalina. Whether we win this challenge or lose it, it makes no difference. We are soldiers of Christ. You are a soldier of Christ. If we live or die, it makes no difference. We will die in faith. That is all that matters. This battle is God's battle. He will send a victory, if not today, then tomorrow. And whichever man wins today, we do not doubt that God will win, and we will win in the end."
"But de la Vega—"
Catalina protested, her fat lower lip trembling. "Perhaps God will take him to his own this afternoon," her mother said steadily. "We should pray for him." Juana made a face at her little sister, but when their mother kneeled again, the two girls clasped hands for comfort. Isabel kneeled beside them, Maria beside her. All of them squinted through their closed eyelids to the plain where the bay charger of de la Vega rode out from the line of the Spaniards, and the black horse of the Moor trotted proudly before the Saracens. The Queen kept her eyes closed until she had finished her prayer. She did not even hear the roar as the two men took up their places, lowered their visors, and clasped their lances. Catalina leapt to her feet, leaning over the low parapet so that she could see the Spanish champion. His horse thundered towards the other, racing legs a blur. The black horse came as fast from the opposite direction. The clash when the two lances smacked into solid armour could be heard on the roof of the little house, as both men were flung from their saddles by the force of the impact. The lances smashed, their breastplates buckled. It was nothing like the ritualized jousts of the court. It was a savage impact, designed to break a neck or stop a heart.
"He is down! He is dead!"
Catalina cried out. "He is stunned," her mother corrected her. "See, he is getting up." The Spanish knight staggered to his feet, unsteady as a drunkard from the heavy blow to his chest. The bigger man was up already, helmet and heavy breastplate cast aside, coming for him with a huge sickle sword at the ready, the light flashing off the razor-sharp edge. De la Vega drew his own great weapon. There was a tremendous crash as the swords smacked together, and then the two men locked blades and struggled, each trying to force the other down. They circled clumsily, staggering under the weight of their armour and from their concussion, but there could be no doubt that the Moor was the stronger man. The watchers could see that de la Vega was yielding under the pressure. He tried to spring back and get free, but the weight of the Moor was bearing down on him, and he stumbled and fell. At once the Black Knight was on top of him, forcing him downwards. De la Vega's hand closed uselessly on his long sword. He could not bring it up. The Moor raised his sword to his victim's throat, ready to give the death blow, his face a black mask of concentration, his teeth gritted. Suddenly he gave a loud cry and fell back. De la Vega rolled up, scrabbled to his feet, crawling on his hands and knees like a rising dog. The Moor was down, plucking at his breast. His great sword dropped to one side. In de la Vega's left hand was a short stabbing dagger, stained with blood, a hidden weapon used in a desperate riposte. With a superhuman effort, the Moor got to his feet, turned his back on the Christian, and staggered towards his own ranks. "I am lost," he said, to the men who ran forwards to catch him. "We have lost." At a hidden signal, the great gates of the Red Fort opened, and the soldiers started to pour out. Juana leapt to her feet. "Madre, we must run!" she screamed. "They're coming! They're coming in their thousands!" Isabella did not rise from her knees, even when her daughter dashed across the roof and ran down the stairs. "Juana, come back!" she ordered in a voice like a whip-crack. "Girls, you will pray." She rose and went to the parapet. First she looked to the marshalling of her army, saw that the officers were settling the men into formation ready for a charge, as the Moorish army, terrifying in their forward rush, came pouring on. Then she glanced down to see Juana, in a frenzy of fear, peeping round the garden wall, unsure whether to run for her horse or back to her mother. Isabella, who loved her daughter, said not another word. She returned to the other girls and kneeled with them. "Let us pray," she said, and closed her eyes.
"She didn't even look,"
Juana repeated incredulously that night, when they were in their room, washing their hands and changing their dirty clothes. Juana's tear-streaked face finally clean.
"There we are, in the middle of a battle, and she closes her eyes."
She knew that she would do more good appealing for the intercession of God than running round crying, Isabel said pointedly, and it gave the army better heart than anything else to see her on her knees in full sight of everyone.
What if she had been hit by an arrow or a spear?
She was not. We were not, and we won the battle. And you, Juana, behaved like a half-mad peasant. I was ashamed of you. I don't know what gets into you. Are you mad or just wicked? Oh, who cares what you think, you stupid widow? 6th January, 1492. Day by day the heart went out of the Moors. The Queen's skirmish turned out to be their last battle. Their champion was dead, their city encircled. They were starving in the land that their fathers had made fertile. Worse, the promised support from Africa had failed them. The Turks had sworn friendship, but the Janissaries did not come. Their king had lost his nerve. His son was a hostage with the Christians, and before them were the princes of Spain, Isabella and Ferdinand, with all the power of Christendom behind them, with a holy war declared and a Christian crusade gathering pace with the scent of success. Within a few days of the meeting of the champions, Boabdil, the king of Granada, had agreed terms of peace, and a few days after, in the ceremony planned with all the grace that was typical of the Moors of Spain, he came down on foot to the iron gates of the city with the keys to the Alhambra palace on a silken pillow, and handed them over to the King and Queen of Spain in a complete surrender. Granada, the red fort that stood above the city to guard it, and the gorgeous palace which was hidden inside the walls, the Alhambra, were given to Ferdinand and to Isabella. Dressed in the gorgeous silks of their defeated enemy, turbaned, slippered, glorious as caliphs, the Spanish royal family, glittering with the spoils of Spain, took Granada. That afternoon, Catalina, the Princess of Wales, walked with her parents up the winding, steep path through the shade of tall trees to the most beautiful palace in Europe, slept that night in the brilliantly tiled harem, and woke to the sound of rippling water in marble fountains, and thought herself a Moorish princess born to luxury and beauty, as well as a princess of England.
And this is my life, from this day of victory. I had been born as a child of the camp, following the army from siege to battle, seeing things that perhaps no child should see, facing adult fears every day. I had marched past the bodies of dead soldiers rotting in the spring heat because there was no time to bury them, and I had ridden behind mules whipped into staggering blood-stained corpses, pulling my father's guns through the high passes of the Sierra. I saw my mother slap a man's face for weeping with exhaustion. I heard children of my own age crying for their parents, burned at the stake for heresy. But at this moment, when we dressed ourselves in embroidered silk, and walked into the red fort of Granada and through the gates to the white pearl that is the Alhambra palace, at this moment I became a princess for the first time. I became a girl raised in the most beautiful palace in Christendom, protected by an impregnable fort, blessed by God among all others. I became a girl of immense, unshakable confidence in the God that had brought us to victory, and in my destiny as his most favourite child and my mother's most favourite daughter. Alhambra proved to me, once and for all, that I was uniquely favoured by God, as my mother had been favoured by God. I was his chosen child, raised in the most beautiful palace in Christendom, and destined for the highest things. The Spanish family, with their officers ahead and the royal guard behind, glorious as sultans, entered the fort through the enormous square tower known as the Justice Gate. As the shadow of the first arch of the tower fell on Isabella's upturned face, the trumpeters played a great shout of defiance, like Joshua before the walls of Jericho, as if they would frighten away the lingering devils of the infidel. At once there was an echo to the blast of sound, a shuddering sigh, from everyone gathered inside the gateway, pressed back against the golden walls, the women half-veiled in their robes, the men standing tall and proud and silent, watching to see what the conquerors would do next. Catalina looked above the sea of heads and saw the flowing shapes of Arabic script engraved on the gleaming walls. "What does that say?" she demanded of Medea, her nursemaid. Medea squinted upwards. "I don't know," she said crossly. She always denied her Moorish roots. She always tried to pretend that she knew nothing of the Moors or their lives, though she had been born and bred a Moor herself, and only converted
according to Juana, for convenience. "Tell us, or we'll pinch you," Juana offered sweetly. The young woman scowled at the two sisters. "It says, 'May God allow the justice of Islam to prevail within.'" Catalina hesitated for a moment, hearing the proud ring of certainty, a determination to match her own mother's voice. "Well, he hasn't," Juana said smartly. "Allah has deserted the Alhambra, and Isabella has arrived, and if you Moors knew Isabella like we do, you would know that the greatest power is coming in and the lesser power going out." "God save the Queen," Medea replied quickly. "I know Queen Isabella well enough." As she spoke, the great doors before them, black wood studded with black nails, swung open on their black hammered hinges, and with another blast of trumpets the King and Queen strode into the inner courtyard. Like dancers rehearsed till they were step-perfect, the Spanish guard peeled off to right and left inside the town walls, checking that the place was safe, and no despairing soldiers were preparing a last ambush. The great fort of the Alcazaba, built like the prow of a ship, jutting out over the plain of Granada, was to their left, and the men poured into it, running across the parade square, ringing the walls, running up and down the towers. Finally Isabella the Queen looked up to the sky, shaded her eyes with her hand clinking with Moorish gold bracelets, and laughed aloud to see the sacred banner of St. James and the silver cross of the Crusade flying where the crescent had been. Then she turned to see the domestic servants of the palace slowly approaching, their heads bowed. They were led by the Grand Vizier, his height emphasized by his flowing robes, his piercing black eyes meeting hers, scanning King Ferdinand at her side and the royal family behind him, the prince and the 4 princesses. The king and the prince were dressed as richly as sultans, wearing rich embroidered tunics over their trousers. The queen and the princesses were wearing the traditional camise tunics made from the finest silks, over white linen trousers, with veils falling from their heads, held back by filets of gold. "Your Royal Highnesses, it is my honour and duty to welcome you to the Alhambra Palace," the Grand Vizier said, as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world to hand over the most beautiful palace in Christendom to armed invaders. The Queen and her husband exchanged one brief glance. "You can take us in," she said. The Grand Vizier bowed and led the way. The Queen glanced back at her children. "Come along, girls," she said, and went ahead of them, through the gardens surrounding the palace, down some steps and into the discreet doorway. "This is the main entrance?" She hesitated before the small door set in the unmarked wall. The man bowed. "Your Highness, it is." Isabella said nothing, but Catalina saw her raise her eyebrows, as if she did not think much of it, and then they all went inside. "But the little doorway is like a keyhole to a treasure chest of boxes, the one opening out from another. The man leads us through them like a slave opening doors to a treasury. Their very names are a poem: the Golden Chamber, the Courtyard of the Myrtles, the Hall of the Ambassadors, the Courtyard of the Lions, or the Hall of the Two Sisters. It will take us weeks to find our way from one exquisitely tiled room to another. It will take us months to stop marvelling at the pleasure of the sound of water running down the marble gullies in the rooms, flowing to a white marble fountain that always spills over with the cleanest, freshest water of the mountains. And I will never tire of looking through the white stucco tracery to the view of the plain beyond, the mountains, the blue sky, and golden hills. Every window is like a frame for a picture. They're designed to make you stop, look, and marvel. Every window frame is like white-work embroidery. The stucco is so fine, so delicate, it is like sugar-work by confectioners, not like anything real. We move into the harem as the easiest and most convenient rooms for my 3 sisters and me, and the harem servants light the braziers in the cool evenings and scatter the scented herbs, as if we were the sultanas who live secluded behind the screens for so long. We have always worn Moorish dress at home, and sometimes at great state occasions, so still there is the whisper of silks and the slap of slippers on marble floors, as if nothing has changed. Now we study where the slave girls read. We walk in the gardens that were planted to delight the favourites of the Sultan. We eat their fruits.
We love the taste of their sherbets. We tie their flowers into garlands for our own heads, and we run down their alleys where the heavy scent of roses and honeysuckle is sweet in the cool of the morning. We bathe in the hammam, standing stock still while the servants lather us all over with a rich soap that smells of flowers. Then they pour golden ewer after golden ewer of hot water over us, splashing from head to toe to wash us clean. We are soothed with rose oil, wrapped in fine sheets, and lie, half drunk with sensual pleasure, on the warm marble table that dominates the entire room, under the golden ceiling where the star-shaped openings admit dazzling rays of sunlight into the shadowy peace of the place. One girl manicures our toes, while another works on our hands, shaping the nails and painting delicate patterns of henna. We let the old woman pluck our eyebrows, paint our eyelashes. We are served as if we are sultanas, with all the riches of Spain and all the luxury of the East, and we surrender utterly to the delight of the palace. It captivates us. We swoon into submission, the so-called victors. Even Isabel, grieving for the loss of her husband, starts to smile again. Even Juana, who is usually so moody and so sulky, is at peace. And I become the pet of the court, the favourite of the gardeners who let me pick my own peaches from the trees, the darling of the harem where I am taught to play and dance and sing, and the favourite of the kitchen where they let me watch them preparing the sweet pastries and dishes of honey and almonds of Arabia. My father meets with foreign emissaries in the hall of the ambassadors. He takes them to the bath-house for talks, like any leisurely sultan. My mother sits cross-legged on the throne of the Nasrids who have ruled here for generations, her bare feet in soft leather slippers, the drapery of her camise falling around her. She listens to the emissaries of the Pope himself, in a chamber that is walled with coloured tiles and dancing with pagan light. It feels like home to her. She was raised in the Alcazar in Seville, another Moorish palace. We walk in their gardens, we bathe in their hammam, we step into their scented leather slippers, and we live a life that is more refined and more luxurious than they could dream of in Paris or London or Rome. We live graciously. We live as we have always aspired to do, like Moors. Our fellow Christians herd goats in the mountains, pray at roadside cairns to the Madonna, are terrified by superstition and lousy with disease, live dirty and die young. We learn from Muslim scholars. We are attended by their doctors, study the stars in the sky which they have named, count with their numbers which start at the magical 0, eat of their sweetest fruits, and delight in the waters that run through their aqueducts. Their architecture pleases us. At every turn of every corner we know that we are living inside beauty. Their power now keeps us safe. The Alcazaba is indeed invulnerable to attack once more. We learn their poetry, we laugh at their games, we delight in their gardens, in their fruits, we bathe in the waters they have made flow. We are the victors, but they have taught us how to rule. Sometimes I think that we are the barbarians, like those who came after the Romans or the Greeks, who could invade the palaces and capture the aqueducts, and then sit like monkeys on a throne, playing with beauty but not understanding it. We do not change our faith, at least. Every palace servant has to give lip service to the beliefs of the one true church. The horns of the mosque are silenced. There is to be no call to prayer in my mother's hearing. And anyone who disagrees can either leave for Africa at once, convert at once, or face the fires of the Inquisition. We do not soften under the spoils of war. We never forget that we are victors, and that we won our victory by force of arms and by the will of God. We made a solemn promise to poor King Boabdil that his people, the Muslims, should be as safe under our rule as the Christians were safe under his. We promised the convivencia, a way of living together, and they believe that we will make a Spain where anyone, Moor or Christian or Jew, can live quietly and with self-respect, since all of us are people of the book. Their mistake is that they meant that truce, and they trusted that truce. And we, as it turns out, do not. We betray our word in 3 months, expelling the Jews and threatening the Muslims. Everyone must convert to the true faith, and then, if there is any shadow of doubt or any suspicion against them, their faith will be tested by the Holy Inquisition. It is the only way to make one nation through one faith. It is the only way to make one people out of the great varied diversity which has been Al-Andalus. My mother builds a chapel in the council chamber, and where it had once said, "Enter and ask, do not be afraid to seek justice, for here you will find it," in the beautiful shapes of Arabic, she prays to a sterner, more intolerant God than Allah, and no one comes for justice any more. But nothing can change the nature of the palace. Not even the stamp of our soldiers' feet on the marble floors can shake the centuries-old sense of peace. I make Madia teach me what the flowing inscriptions mean in every room, and my favourite is not the promises of justice, but the words written in the courtyard of the Two Sisters, which says, "Have you ever seen such a beautiful garden?" and then answers itself, "We have never seen a garden with greater abundance of fruit, nor sweeter, nor more perfumed." It is not truly a palace, not even as those we had known at Cordoba or Toledo. It is not a castle, nor a fort. It was built first and foremost as a garden with rooms of exquisite luxury, so that one could live outside. It is a series of courtyards designed for flowers and people alike. It is a dream of beauty. Walls, tiles, pillars melting into flowers, climbers, fruit and herbs. The Moors believe that a garden is a paradise on earth, and they have spent fortunes over the centuries to make this Al-Yana the word that means garden, secret place, and paradise. I know that I love it. Even as a little child I know that this is an exceptional place, that I will never find anywhere more lovely. And even as a child I know that I cannot stay here. It is God's will and my mother's will that I must leave Al-Yana, my secret place, my garden, my paradise. It is to be my destiny that I should find the most beautiful place in all the world when I am just 6 years old, and then leave it when I am 15, as homesick as Boabdil, as if happiness and peace for me will only ever be short-lived. Dogmersfield Palace, Hampshire, Autumn 1501. I say you cannot come in. If you were the King of England himself, you could not come in. I am the King of England, Henry Tudor said, without a flicker of amusement. And she can either come out right now, or I damn well will come in, and my son will follow me. The Infanta has already sent word to the King that she cannot see him, the duenna said witheringly. The noblemen of her court rode out to explain to him that she is in seclusion as a lady of Spain. Do you think the King of England would come riding down the road when the Infanta has refused to receive him? What sort of a man do you think he is? Exactly like this one, he said, and thrust his fist with the great gold ring towards her face. The Count de Cabra came into the hall in a rush, and at once recognized the lean 40-year-old man threatening the Infanta's duenna with a clenched fist, a few aghast servitors behind him, and gasped out, "The King!" At the same moment the duenna recognized the new badge of England, the combined roses of York and Lancaster, and recoiled. The Count skidded to a halt and threw himself into a low bow. "It is the King!" he hissed, his voice muffled by speaking with his head on his knees. The duenna gave a little gasp of horror and dropped into a deep curtsy. "Get up," the King said shortly, "and fetch her." "But she is a Princess of Spain, Your Grace," the woman said, rising but with her head still bowed low. "She is to stay in seclusion. She cannot be seen by you before her wedding day. That is the tradition. Her gentleman went out to explain to you—" "It's your tradition, it's not my tradition. And since she is my daughter-in-law in my country under my laws, she will obey my tradition. She has been brought up most carefully, most modestly, most properly. Then she will be very shocked to find an angry man in her bedroom. Madam, I suggest that you get her up at once." "I will not, Your Grace. I take my orders from the Queen of Spain herself, and she charged me to make sure that every respect was shown to the Infanta, and that her behaviour was in every way—" "Madam, you can take your working orders from me, or your marching orders from me, I don't care which.
Now send the girl out, or I swear on my crown I will come in, and if I catch her naked in bed, then she won't be the first woman I have ever seen in such a case. But she had better pray that she is the prettiest." The Spanish duenna went quite white at the insult. "Choose," the king said stonily. "I cannot fetch the Infanta," she said stubbornly. "Dear God, that's it. Tell her I am coming in at once." She scuttled backwards like an angry crow, her face blanched with shock. Henry gave her a few moments to prepare, and then called her bluff by striding in behind her. The room was lit only by candles and firelight. The covers of the bed were turned back as if the girl had hastily jumped up. Henry registered the intimacy of being in her bedroom, with her sheets still warm, the scent of her lingering in the enclosed space, before he looked at her. She was standing by the bed, one small white hand on the carved wooden post. She had a cloak of dark blue thrown over her shoulders, and her white nightgown, trimmed with priceless lace, peeped through the opening at the front. Her rich auburn hair, plaited for sleep, hung down her back, but her face was completely shrouded in a hastily thrown mantilla of dark lace. Donna Elvira darted between the girl and the king. "This is the Infanta," she said, "veiled until her wedding day." "Not on my money," Henry Tudor said bitterly. "I'll see what I've bought, thank you." He stepped forwards. The desperate duenna nearly threw herself to her knees. "Her modesty! Has she got some awful mark?" he demanded, driven to voice his deepest fear. "Some blemish? Is she scarred by the pox, and they did not tell me?" "No, I swear." Silently the girl put out her white hand and took the ornate lace hem of her veil. Her duenna gasped a protest, but could do nothing to stop the princess as she raised the veil and then flung it back. Her clear blue eyes stared into the lined, angry face of Henry Tudor without wavering. The king drank her in, and then gave a little sigh of relief at the sight of her. She was an utter beauty. A smooth, rounded face, a straight long nose, a full, sulky, sexy mouth. Her chin was up, he saw, her gaze challenging. This was no shrinking maiden fearing ravishment. This was a fighting princess standing on her dignity even in this most appalling moment of embarrassment. He bowed. "I am Henry Tudor, King of England," he said. She curtsied. He stepped forwards and saw her curb her instinct to flinch away. He took her firmly at the shoulders and kissed one warm, smooth cheek and then the other. The perfume of her hair and the warm female smell of her body came to him, and he felt desire pulse in his groin and at his temples. Quickly he stepped back and let her go. "You are welcome to England," he said. He cleared his throat. "You will forgive my impatience to see you. My son, too, is on his way to visit you." "I beg your pardon," she said icily, speaking in perfectly phrased French. "I was not informed until a few moments ago that your Grace was insisting on the honour of this unexpected visit." Henry fell back a little from the whip of her temper. "I have a right—" She shrugged, an absolutely Spanish gesture. "Of course. You have every right over me." At the ambiguous, provocative words he was again aware of his closeness to her, of the intimacy of the small room, the tester bed hung with rich draperies, the sheets invitingly turned back, the pillow still impressed with the shape of her head. It was a scene for ravishment, not for a royal greeting. Again he felt the secret thud-thud of lust. "I'll see you outside," he said abruptly, as if it was her fault that he could not rid himself of the flash in his mind of what it would be like to have this ripe little beauty that he had bought. What would it be like if he had bought her for himself, rather than for his son? "I shall be honoured," she said coldly. He got himself out of the room briskly enough, and nearly collided with Prince Arthur, hovering anxiously in the doorway. "Fool," he remarked. Prince Arthur, pale with nerves, pushed his blonde fringe back from his face, stood still, and said nothing. "I'll send that duenna home at the first moment I can," the king said, "and the rest of them. She can't make a little Spain in England, my son. The country won't stand for it, and I damn well won't stand for it." "People don't object. The country people seem to love the princess," Arthur suggested mildly. Her escort says, because she wears a stupid hat, because she is odd, Spanish, rare, because she is young, and—" He broke off. "Pretty." "Is she?" he gasped. "I mean, is she?" "Haven't I just gone in to make sure? But no Englishman will stand for any Spanish nonsense once they get over the novelty, and neither will I. This is a marriage to cement an alliance, not to flatter her vanity. Whether they like her or not, she's marrying you. Whether you like her or not, she's marrying you. Whether she likes it or not, she's marrying you. And she'd better get out here now, or I won't like her, and that will be the only thing that can make a difference." "I have to go out. I have won only the briefest of reprieves, and I know he is waiting for me outside the door to my bedchamber, and he has demonstrated powerfully enough that if I do not go to him, then the mountain will come to Mahomet, and I will be shamed again." I brush Donna Elvira aside as a duenna who cannot protect me now, and I go to the door of my rooms. My servants are frozen like slaves enchanted in a fairy tale by this extraordinary behaviour from a king. My heart hammers in my ears, and I know a girl's embarrassment at having to step forwards in public, but also a soldier's desire to let battle be joined, the eagerness to know the worst, to face danger rather than evade it. Henry of England wants me to meet his son, before his travelling party, without ceremony, without dignity, as if we were a scramble of peasants. So be it. He will not find a princess of Spain falling back for fear. I grit my teeth. I smile, as my mother commanded me. I nod to my herald, who is as stunned as the rest of my companions. "Announce me," I order him. His face blank with shock, he throws open the door. "The Infanta Catalina, Princess of Spain and Princess of Wales," he bellows. This is me. This is my moment. This is my battle cry. I step forwards. The Spanish Infanta, with her face naked to every man's gaze, stood in the darkened doorway and then walked into the room, only a little flame of colour in both cheeks betraying her ordeal. At his father's side, Prince Arthur swallowed. She was far more beautiful than he had imagined, and 1,000,000 times more haughty. She was dressed in a gown of dark black velvet, slashed to show an undergown of carnation silk, the neck cut square and low over her plump breasts, hung with ropes of pearls. Her auburn hair, freed from the plait, tumbled down her back in a great wave of red gold. On her head was a black lace mantilla, flung determinedly back. She swept a deep curtsy, and came up with her head held high, graceful as a dancer. "I beg your pardon for not being ready to greet you," she said in French. "If I had known you were coming, I would have been prepared." "I'm surprised you didn't hear the racket," the king said. "I was arguing at your door for a good 10 minutes. "I thought it was a pair of porters brawling," she said coolly. Arthur suppressed a gasp of horror at her impertinence, but his father was eyeing her with a smile, as if a new filly was showing promising spirit. "No, it was me, threatening your lady-in-waiting. I am sorry that I had to march in on you." She inclined her head. "That was my duenna, Donna Elvira. I am sorry if she displeased you. Her English is not good. She cannot have understood what you wanted." "I wanted to see my daughter-in-law, and my son wanted to see his bride. And I expect an English princess to behave like an English princess, and not like some damn sequestered girl in a harem. I thought your parents had beaten the Moors. I didn't expect to find them set up as your models." Catalina ignored the insult with a slight turn of her head. "I am sure that you will teach me good English manners," she said. "Who better to advise me?" She turned to Prince Arthur and swept him a royal curtsy. "My lord?" He faltered in his bow in return, amazed at the serenity that she could muster in this most embarrassing of moments. He reached into his jacket for her present, fumbled with a little purse of jewels, dropped them, picked them up again, and finally thrust them towards her, feeling like a fool. She took them and inclined her head in thanks, but did not open them.
End of CD 1. CD 2.
"Have you dined, Your Grace?" "We'll eat here," he said bluntly. "I ordered dinner already." "Then can I offer you a drink? Or somewhere to wash and change your clothes before you dine?" She examined the long, lean length of him consideringly, from the mud spattering his pale, lined face to his dusty boots. The English were a prodigiously dirty nation. Not even a great house such as this one had an adequate hammam or even piped water. "Or perhaps you don't like to wash?" A harsh chuckle was forced from the king. "You can order me a cup of ale, and have them send fresh clothes and hot water to the best bedroom, and I'll change before dinner." He raised a hand. "You needn't take it as a compliment to you. I always wash before dinner." Arthur saw her nip her lower lip with little white teeth as if to refrain from some sarcastic reply. "Yes, Your Grace," she said pleasantly. "As you wish." She summoned her lady-in-waiting to her side and gave her low-voiced orders in rapid Spanish. The woman curtsied and led the king from the room. The princess turned to Prince Arthur. "Et tu?" she asked in Latin. "And you?" "I? What?" he stammered. He felt that she was trying not to sigh with impatience. "Would you like to wash and change your coat also?" "I've washed," he said. As soon as the words were out of his mouth he could have bitten off his own tongue. He sounded like a child being scolded by a nurse, he thought. "I've washed, indeed." What was he going to do next? Hold out his hands, palms upward, so that she could see he was a good boy? "Then will you take a glass of wine? Or ale?" Catalina turned to the table, where the servants were hastily laying cups and flagons. "Wine." She raised a glass and a flagon, and the two chinked together, and then chink, chink, chinked again. In amazement he saw that her hands were trembling. She poured the wine quickly and held it to him. His gaze went from her hand and the slightly rippled surface of the wine to her pale face. She was not laughing at him, he saw. She was not at all at ease with him. His father's rudeness had brought out the pride in her, but alone with him she was just a girl, some months older than him, but still just a girl. The daughter of the two most formidable monarchs in Europe, but still just a girl with shaking hands. "You need not be frightened," he said very quietly. "I am sorry about all this." He meant your failed attempt to avoid this meeting, my father's brusque informality, my own inability to stop him or soften him, and more than anything else, the misery that this business must be for you. Coming far from your home among strangers, and meeting your new husband, dragged from your bed under protest. She looked down. He stared at the flawless pallor of her skin, at her fair eyelashes and pale eyebrows. Then she looked up at him. "It's all right," she said. "I have seen far worse than this. I have been in far worse places than this, and I have known worse men than your father. You need not fear for me. I am afraid of nothing." "No one will ever know what it cost me to smile, what it cost me to stand before your father and not tremble. I am not yet 16. I am far from my mother. I am in a strange country. I cannot speak the language, and I know nobody here. I have no friends but a party of companions and servants that I have brought with me, and they look to me to protect them. They do not think to help me. I know what I have to do. I have to be a Spanish princess for the English and an English princess for the Spanish. I have to seem at ease where I am not, and assume confidence when I am afraid. You may be my husband, but I can hardly see you. I have no sense of you yet. I have no time to consider you. I am absorbed in being the princess that your father has bought, the princess that my mother has delivered, the princess that will fulfill the bargain and secure a treaty between England and Spain. No one will ever know that I have to pretend to ease, pretend to confidence, pretend to grace. Of course I am afraid, but I will never, never show it. And when When they call my name, I will always step forwards." The king, having washed and taken a couple of glasses of wine before he came to his dinner, was affable with the young princess, determined to overlook their introduction. Once or twice she caught him glancing at her sideways, as if to get the measure of her, and she turned to look at him, full on, one sandy eyebrow slightly raised, as if to interrogate him. "Yes?" he demanded. "I beg your pardon," she said equably. "I thought your grace needed something. You glanced at me." "I was thinking you're not much like your portrait," he said. She flushed a little. Portraits were designed to flatter the sitter, and when the sitter was a royal princess on the marriage market, even more so. "Better looking," Henry said begrudgingly, to reassure her. "Younger, softer, prettier." She did not warm to the praise, as he had expected her to do. She merely nodded, as if it were an interesting observation. "You had a bad voyage," Henry remarked. "Very bad," she said. She turned to Prince Arthur. "We were driven back as we set out from Corunna in August, and we had to wait for the storms to pass. When we finally set sail, it was still terribly rough, and then we were forced into Plymouth. We couldn't get to Southampton at all. We were all quite sure we would be drowned." "Well, you couldn't have come overland," Henry said flatly, thinking of the parlous state of France and the enmity of the French king. "You'd be a priceless hostage for a king who was heartless enough to take you. Thank God you never fell into enemy hands." She looked at him thoughtfully. "Pray God I never do." "Well, your troubles are over now," Henry concluded. "The next boat you are on will be the royal barge when you go down the Thames. How shall you like to become Princess of Wales?" "I have been the Princess of Wales ever since I was 3 years old," she corrected him. "They always called me Catalina the Infanta, Princess of Wales. I knew it was my destiny." She looked at Arthur, who still sat silently observing the table. "I have known we would be married all my life. It was kind of you to write to me so often. It made me feel that we were not complete strangers." He flushed. "I was ordered to write to you," he said awkwardly, "as part of my studies, but I liked getting your replies." "Good God, boy, you don't exactly sparkle, do you?" asked his father critically. Arthur flushed scarlet to his ears. "There was no need to tell her that you were ordered to write," his father ruled. "Better to let her think that you were writing of your own choice." "I don't mind," Catalina said quietly. "I was ordered to reply. And as it happens, I should like us always to speak the truth to each other." The king barked out a laugh. "Not in a year's time you won't," he predicted. "You will be all in favour of the polite lie then. The great saviour of a marriage is mutual ignorance." Arthur nodded obediently, but Catalina merely smiled, as if his observations were of interest, but not necessarily true. Henry found himself piqued by the girl, and still aroused by her prettiness. "I dare say your father does not tell your mother every thought that crosses his mind," he said, trying to make her look at him again. He succeeded. She gave him a long, slow, considering gaze from her blue eyes. "Perhaps he does not," she conceded. "I would not know. It is not fitting that I should know. But whether he tells her or not, my mother knows everything anyway." He laughed. Her dignity was quite delightful in a girl whose head barely came up to his chest. "She is a visionary, your mother? She has the gift of sight?" She did not laugh in reply. "She is wise," she said simply. "She is the wisest monarch in Europe." The king thought he would be foolish to bridle at a girl's devotion to her mother, and it would be graceless to point out that her mother might have unified the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon, but that she was still a long way from creating a peaceful and united Spain. The tactical skill of Isabella and Ferdinand had forged a single country from the Moorish kingdoms. They had yet to make everyone accept their peace. Catalina's own journey to London had been disrupted by rebellions of Moors and Jews who could not bear the tyranny of the Spanish kings. He changed the subject. "Why don't you show us a dance?" he demanded, thinking that he would like to see her move. "Or is that not allowed in Spain either?" "Since I am an English princess, I must learn your customs," she said. "Would an English princess get up in the middle of the night and dance for the king after he forced his way into her rooms?" Henry laughed at her. If she had any sense, she would. She threw him a small, demure smile.
"Then I will dance, with my ladies,"
she decided, and rose from her seat at the high table and went down to the centre of the floor. She called one by name, Henry noted, Maria de Salinas, a pretty dark-haired girl who came quickly to stand beside Catalina. 3 other young women, pretending shyness but eager to show themselves off, came forwards. Henry looked them over. He had asked their Majesties of Spain that their daughters' companions should all be pretty, and he was pleased to see that, however blunt and ill-mannered they had found his request, they had acceded to it. The girls were all good-looking, but none of them outshone the princess, who stood composed, and then raised her hands and clapped to order the musicians to play. He noticed at once that she moved like a sensual woman. The dance was a pavane, a slow ceremonial dance, and she moved with her hips swaying and her eyes heavy-lidded, a little smile on her face. She had been well schooled. Any princess would be taught how to dance in the courtly world where dancing, singing, music and poetry mattered more than anything else. But she danced like a woman who let the music move her, and Henry, who had some experience, believed that women who could be summoned by music were the ones who responded to the rhythms of lust. He went from pleasure in watching her to a sense of rising irritation that this exquisite piece would be put in Arthur's cold bed. He could not see his thoughtful, scholarly boy teasing and arousing the passion in this girl on the edge of womanhood. He imagined that Arthur would fumble about and perhaps hurt her, and she would grit her teeth and do her duty as a woman and a queen must, and then, like as not, she would die in childbirth, and the whole performance of finding a bride for Arthur would have to be undergone again, with no benefit for himself, but only this irritated, frustrated arousal that she seemed to inspire in him. It was good that she was desirable, since she would be an ornament to his court, but it was a nuisance that she should be so very desirable to him. Henry looked away from her dancing and comforted himself with the thought of her dowry, which would bring him lasting benefit and come directly to him, unlike this bride, who seemed bound to unsettle him and must go, however mismatched, to his son. As soon as they were married, her treasurer would hand over the first payment of her dowry in solid gold. A year later he would deliver the second part in gold and in her plate and jewels. Having fought his way to the throne on a shoestring and uncertain credit, Henry trusted the power of money more than anything in life, even more than his throne, for he knew he could buy a throne with money, and far more than women, for they were cheaply bought, and far, far more than the joy of a smile from a virgin princess who stopped her dance now, swept him a curtsy, and came up smiling.
"Do I please you?"
she demanded, flushed and a little breathless. "Well enough," he said, determined that she should never know how much. "But it's late now, and you should go back to your bed. We'll ride with you a little way in the morning before we go ahead of you to London." She was surprised at the abruptness of his reply. Again she glanced towards Arthur, as if he might contradict his father's plans, perhaps stay with her for the remainder of the journey, since his father had bragged of their informality. But the boy said nothing. "As you wish, Your Grace," she said politely. The king nodded and rose to his feet. The court billowed into deep curtsies and bows as he stalked past them, out of the room. Not so informal at all, Catalina thought as she watched the King of England stride through his court, his head high. He may boast of being a soldier with the manners of the camp, but he insists on obedience and on the show of deference. As indeed he should, added Isabella's daughter to herself. Arthur followed behind his father with a quick "Good night" to the princess as he left. In a moment all the men in their train had gone too, and the princess was alone but for her ladies. "What an extraordinary man," she remarked to her favourite, Maria de Salinas. "He liked you," the young woman said. "He watched you very closely. He liked you." "And why should he not?" she asked, with the instinctive arrogance of a girl born to the greatest kingdom in Europe. "And even if he did not, it is all already agreed, and there can be no change. It has been agreed for almost all my life." "He is not what I expected,"
this king who fought his way to the throne and picked up his crown from the mud of a battlefield? I expected him to be more like a champion, like a great soldier, perhaps like my father. Instead, he has the look of a merchant, a man who puzzles over profit indoors, not a man who won his kingdom and his wife at the point of a sword. I suppose I hoped for a man like Don Hernando, a hero that I could look up to, a man I would be proud to call father. But this king is lean and pale like a clerk, not a knight from the romances at all. I expected his court to be more grand. I expected a great procession and a formal meeting with long introductions and elegant speeches, as we would have done it in the Alhambra. But he is abrupt. In my view, he is rude. I shall have to become accustomed to these northern ways, this scramble to do things, this brusque ordering. I cannot expect things to be done well or even correctly. I shall have to overlook a lot until I am queen and can change things. But anyway, it hardly matters whether I like the king or he likes me. He has engaged in this treaty with my father, and I am betrothed to his son. It hardly matters what I think of him or what he thinks of me. It is not as if we will have to deal much together. I shall live and rule Wales, and he will live and rule England, and when he dies it will be my husband on his throne, and my son will be the next Prince of Wales, and I shall be queen. As for my husband-to-be, oh, he has made a very different first impression. He is so handsome. I did not expect him to be so handsome. He is so fair and slight. He is like a page boy from one of the old romances. I can imagine him waking all night in a vigil, or singing up to a castle window. He has pale, almost silvery skin. He has fine golden hair, and yet he is taller than me, and lean, and strong, like a boy on the edge of manhood. He has a rare smile, one that comes reluctantly, and then shines. And he is kind. That is a great thing in a husband. He was kind when he took the glass of wine from me. He saw that I was trembling, and he tried to reassure me. I wonder what he thinks of me. I do so wonder what he thinks of me. Just as the king had ruled, he and Arthur went swiftly back to Windsor the next morning, and Catalina's train, with her litter carried by mules, with her trousseau in great travelling chests, her ladies-in-waiting, her Spanish household, and the guards for her dowry treasure, laboured up the muddy road to London at a far slower pace. She did not see the prince again until their wedding day, but when she arrived in the village of Kingston-upon-Thames, her train halted in order to meet the greatest man in the kingdom, the young Edward Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, and Henry, Duke of York, the king's second son, who were appointed to accompany her to Lambeth Palace. "I'll come out," Catalina said hastily, emerging from her litter and walking quickly past the waiting horses, not wanting another quarrel with her strict duenna about young ladies meeting young men before their wedding day. "Donna Elvira, say nothing. The boy is a child of 10 years old. It doesn't matter. Not even my mother would think that it matters." "At least wear your veil," the woman implored. "The Duke of Buck, whatever his name, is here too. Wear your veil when you go before him, for your own reputation, Infanta." "Buckingham," Catalina corrected her. "The Duke of Buckingham. And call me Princess of Wales, and you know I cannot wear my veil because he will have been commanded to report to the king. You know what my mother said, that he is the king's mother's ward, restored to his family fortunes, and must be shown the greatest respect." The older woman shook her head, but Catalina marched out, barefaced, feeling both fearful and reckless at her own daring, and saw the Duke's men drawn up in array on the road, and before them a young boy, helmet off, bright head shining in the sunshine. Her first thought was that he was utterly unlike his brother. While Arthur was fair-haired and slight and serious-looking, with a pale complexion and warm brown eyes, this was a sunny boy who looked as if he never had a serious thought in his head. He did not take after his lean-faced father. He had the look of a boy for whom life came easily. His hair was red gold, his face round and still baby-plump. His smile, when he first saw her, was genuinely friendly and bright,
and his blue eyes shone as if he was accustomed to seeing a very pleasing world. "Sister," he said warmly, jumped down from his horse with a clatter of armour, and swept her a low bow. "Brother Henry," she said, curtsying back to him to precisely the right height, considering that he was only a second son of England, and she was an infanta of Spain. "I am so pleased to see you," he said quickly, his Latin rapid, his English accent strong. "I was so hoping that His Majesty would let me come to meet you before I had to take you into London on your wedding day. I thought it would be so awkward to go marching down the aisle with you and hand you over to Arthur if we hadn't even spoken. And call me Harry. Everyone calls me Harry." "I too am pleased to meet you, Brother Harry," Catalina said politely, rather taken aback at his enthusiasm. "Pleased? You should be dancing with joy," he exclaimed buoyantly, "because Father said that I could bring you the horse which was to be one of your wedding day presents, and so we can ride together to Lambeth. Arthur said you should wait for your wedding day, but I said, why should she wait? She won't be able to ride on her wedding day. She'll be too busy getting married. But if I take it to her now, we can ride at once." "That was kind of you." "Oh, I never take any notice of Arthur," Harry said cheerfully. Catalina had to choke down a giggle. "You don't?" He made a face and shook his head. "Serious," he said. "You'll be amazed how serious. And scholarly, of course. But not gifted. Everyone says I am very gifted, languages mostly, but music also. We can speak French together if you wish. I am extraordinarily fluent for my age. I am considered a pretty fair musician, and of course I am a sportsman. Do you hunt?" "No," Catalina said, a little overwhelmed. "At least I only follow the hunt when we go after boar or wolves." "Wolves? I should so like to hunt wolves. Do you really have bears?" "Yes, in the hills." "I should so like to hunt a bear. Do you hunt wolves on foot like boar?" "No, on horseback," she said. "They are very fast. You have to take very fast dogs to pull them down. It's a horrid hunt." "I shouldn't mind that," he said. "I don't mind anything like that. Everyone says I'm terribly brave about things like that." "I'm sure they do," she said, smiling. A handsome man in his mid-20s came forwards and bowed. "Oh, this is Edward Stafford, the Duke of Buckingham," Harry said quickly. "May I present him?" Catalina held out her hand, and the man bowed again over it. His intelligent, handsome face was warm with a smile. "You are welcome to your own country," he said in faultless Castilian. "I hope everything has been to your liking on your journey. Is there anything I can provide for you?" "I have been well cared for indeed," Catalina said, blushing with pleasure at being greeted in her own language. "And the welcome I have had from people all along the way has been very kind." "Look, here's your new horse," Harry interrupted, as the groom led a beautiful black mare forwards. "You'll be used to good horses, of course. Do you have Barbary horses all the time?" "My mother insists on them for the cavalry," she said. "Oh!" he breathed, "because they are so fast." "They can be trained as fighting horses," she said, going forwards and holding out her hand, palm upwards, for the mare to sniff at and nibble at her fingers, with a soft, gentle mouth. "Fighting horses?" he pursued. "The Saracens have horses which can fight as their masters do, and the Barbary horses can be trained to do it too," she said. "They rear up and strike down a soldier with their front hooves, and they will kick out behind too. The Turks have horses that will pick up a sword from the ground and hand it back to the rider. My mother says that one good horse is worth 10 men in battle." "I should so like to have a horse like that," Harry said longingly. "I wonder how I should ever get one." He paused, but she did not rise to the bait. "If only someone would give me a horse like that, I could learn how to ride it," he said transparently. "Perhaps for my birthday, or perhaps next week, since it is not me getting married, and I am not getting any wedding gifts, since I am quite left out and quite neglected." "Perhaps," said Catalina, who had once seen her own brother get his way with exactly the same wheedling. "I should be trained to ride properly," he said. "Father has promised that though I am to go into the church, I shall be allowed to ride at the quintain. But my lady the king's mother says I may not joust, and it's really unfair. I should be allowed to joust. If I had a proper horse, I could joust. I'm sure I would beat everyone." "I am sure you would," she said. "Well, shall we go?" he asked, seeing that she would not give him a horse for the asking. "I cannot ride. I do not have my riding clothes unpacked." He hesitated. "Can't you just go in that?" Catalina laughed. "This is velvet and silk. I can't ride in it. And besides, I can't gallop around England looking like a mummer." "Oh," he said. "Well, shall you go in your litter, then? Won't it make us very slow?" "I am sorry for that, but I am ordered to travel in a litter," she said, "with the curtains drawn. I can't think that even your father would want me to charge around the country with my skirts tucked up." "Of course the princess cannot ride today," the Duke of Buckingham ruled. "As I told you, she has to go in her litter." Harry shrugged. "Well, I didn't know. Nobody told me what you were going to wear. Can I go ahead, then? My horses will be so much faster than the mules." "You can ride ahead, but not out of sight," Catalina decided. "Since you are supposed to be escorting me, you should be with me." "As I said," the Duke of Buckingham observed quietly, and exchanged a little smile with the princess. "I'll wait at every crossroads," Harry promised. "I am escorting you, remember, and on your wedding day I shall be escorting you again. I have a white suit with gold slashing." "How handsome you will look," she said, and saw him flush with pleasure. "Oh, I don't know. I'm sure everyone will remark what a handsome boy you are," she said, as he looked pleased. "Everyone always cheers most loudly for me," he confided, "and I like to know that the people love me. Father says that the only way to keep a throne is to be beloved by the people. That was King Richard's mistake, Father says." "My mother says that the way to keep the throne is to do God's work." "Oh," he said, clearly unimpressed. "Well, different countries, I suppose." "So we shall travel together?" she said. "I will tell my people that we are ready to move on." "I will tell them," he insisted. "It is me who escorts you. I shall give the orders, and you shall rest in your litter." He gave one quick sideways glance at her. "When we get to Lambeth Palace, you shall stay in your litter till I come for you. I shall draw back the curtains and take you in, and you should hold my hand." "I should like that very much," she assured him, and saw his ready rush of colour once again. He bustled off, and the Duke bowed to her with a smile. "He is a very bright boy, very eager," he said. "You must forgive his enthusiasm. He has been much indulged." "His mother's favourite?" she asked, thinking of her own mother's adoration for her only son. "Worse still," the Duke said with a smile. "His mother loves him as she should, but he is the absolute apple of his grandmother's eye, and it is she who rules the court. Luckily he is a good boy and well-mannered. He has too good a nature to be spoiled, and the king's mother tempers her treats with lessons." "She is an indulgent woman?" she asked. He gave a little gulp of laughter. "Only to her son," he said. "The rest of us find her, more majestic than motherly." "May we talk again at Lambeth?" Catalina asked, tempted to know more about this household that she was to join. "At Lambeth and London I shall be proud to serve you," the young man said, his eyes warm with admiration. "You must command me as you wish. I shall be your friend in England. You can call on me." "I must have courage. I am the daughter of a brave woman, and I have prepared for this all my life. When the young Duke spoke so kindly to me, there was no need for me to feel like weeping. That was foolish. I must keep my head up and smile. My mother said to me that if I smile, no one will know that I am homesick or afraid. I shall smile and smile, however odd things seem. And though this England seems so strange now, I will become accustomed. I will learn their ways and feel at home here. Their odd ways will become my ways, and the worst things, the things that I utterly cannot bear, those I shall change when I am queen. And anyway it will be better for me than it was for Isabel, my sister. She was only married a few months, and then she had to come home a widow. Better for me than for Maria, who had to follow in Isabel's footsteps to Portugal. Better for me than for Juana, who is sick with love for her husband Philip. It must be better for me than it was for Juan, my poor brother,
who died so soon after finding happiness. And all was better for me than for my mother, whose childhood was lived on a knife-edge.